Australian waters are home to one of the world's most feared predators, the great white shark. This is the story of the country's relationship with sharks, and how, in an instant, our famous beaches can turn from playgrounds into scenes of tragedy. Earlier this month, tragedy struck again. Surfer Mercury Salakas was attacked off Reef in Sydney's northern beaches. Friends pulled him from the water, but he couldn't be saved. He had lost both legs and an arm.
I suspect the white shark was moving extremely quickly, so the white shark might have been swimming around there for quite a while. When they're in feeding mode, they're often looking to make one run, so they use up a lot of energy. So just think of a sprinter. You've got one run, and it's obviously hit the person. He had no chance, full stop. There was nothing anybody else in the water could have done. There was anything he could have done, and there was nothing the first responders could have done.
This was Sydney's second fatal shark attack in 3 years, after a 60-year run without any deadly attacks. But shark attacks in Sydney are nothing new. In fact, the city's battle with sharks goes back more than a century. In the 1800s, the Glebe Island abattoirs processed thousands of animals every day. Blood, offal, and carcasses were dumped straight into Sydney Harbour, attracting sharks. Between 1852 and 1915, at least 50 shark-related deaths were recorded in New South Wales, about half inside the harbour.
Historically, you had those industries that were pumping offal directly into the harbour, which unsurprisingly attracted large populations of sharks. And the fatality rate was obviously much higher due to a lack of first aid. So I could probably make the case that some of those bites, not even as far back as the 1800s, but the early 1900s, some of those people would survive today.
When the Glebe Island abattoirs closed in 1915, the constant stream of blood and carcasses into Sydney Harbour slowed down, and the sharks seemed to move away. At the same time, Sydney's population was booming, and people were heading to the ocean beaches in greater numbers, like Bondi, Coogee, and Manly. More swimmers in the surf meant more chances. The 1920s and 30s became Sydney's shark era, where there were 15 attacks, 10 of them fatal. Finally, public pressure led to shark nets in 1937. Sharks
were killed, sometimes often just for their jaws, so there was active hunting of them, particularly after a bite had occurred.
For a while, it seemed to work. But today, the question returns. Are shark attacks rising, and what can we really do about it? From 1964 to 2022, over nearly 6 decades, no fatal shark attacks were reported in Sydney Harbour or its surrounding beaches. The last person to die in the harbour was actress Marsha Hathaway, taken by a bull shark in 1963. But that didn't mean the harbour was safe. In 2009, Navy clearance diver Paul de Gelder was mauled by a bull shark during a training exercise near Garden Island. He lost a hand and a leg, but survived. In 2024, swimmer Lauren O'Neill was bitten by a bull shark in Elizabeth Bay, just meters from luxury apartments, but she survived. Then, after nearly 60 years without a fatality, in 2022, British diving instructor Simon Nellis was killed by a great white at Little Bay, the first deadly attack in Sydney's waters since 1963. And now, in 2025, tragedy has struck again. Surfer Mercury Salakas was fatally mauled off Reef, the second Sydney region death in just 3 years. Tragedy also struck in Queensland when 17-year-old lifesaver Charlie Zamuda was killed by a shark at Warren Beach. Dr. Daryl McPhee says his research, published in 2014, shows shark bites are rising across Australia.
There's never a single reason. Obviously, increased number of people in the water is a factor. Sharks potentially spending more time as some of our coastal fish resources, such as Australian salmon, have recovered from low levels. Since our whale population has recovered substantially. We have more food sources for white sharks in particular. Also, in the Greater Sydney region, also expect a climate change signal with bull sharks through time, because the available information is suggesting that they're spending longer each year as the waters have warmed around Greater Sydney within their thermal tolerance for longer.
But he says it's important to put the data in context.
Look, shark attacks are always rare and they remain rare. You're at least 20 times more likely to drown at a surf beach than you are to be killed by a shark. But that is obviously no consolation for the friends and families of the victims.
Our population has grown massively, and more people surf, swim, snorkel, and dive than ever before. Statistically, more humans in shark habitat means more chances for encounters, even if shark numbers stay the same. This latest fatal attack happened at a beach without shark nets, and comes as some Aussie councils debate removing them. Critics argue they harm other marine life, but supporters argue they've kept fatalities rare for nearly a century. There have only been 2 deaths at shark-net protected beaches in New South Wales since then, and 28 at unprotected ones. Dr. Daryl McPhee says keeping them for now is a wise move, but even he admits the evidence isn't clear-cut.
Shark nets are not enclosures, they're a fishing device that's aimed to locally reduce the abundance of sharks. There's certainly quite a few people who feel safer in the water in the presence of shark nets. So there's a level of a placebo effect. You can never definitively determine whether they work or not. What's clear, because the events are rare, and you can't do nice, what we call manipulative experiments to work out whether they work or not, because that would involve deliberately putting people at risk, which is obviously unethical and not going to happen.
So if shark nets aren't really working, what's the alternative? Today, technology is becoming the new frontline in the fight against shark attacks. Drones now patrol Sydney's busiest beaches, scanning the water in real time and spotting sharks long before swimmers notice. Smart drum lines are dotted around too, which are high-tech buoys with baited hooks. When a shark takes the bait, the buoy triggers an instant alert. Crews rush out, tag the shark with the tracker, and release it alive offshore, away from swimmers. Across Australia, hundreds of sharks are acoustically tagged in tagging programs, and the number is growing. Underwater listening stations detect them as soon as they come close to shore. The moment a signal is picked up, lifeguards can warn swimmers through apps, text alerts, and beach sirens. And even surfers can carry their own shield, ankle-worn devices that fire off an electronic pulse, creating an invisible barrier that overwhelms a shark's senses. But what about culling? Following the latest attack, some have argued that we need to start shooting sharks like they did in the 1900s.
So the same way as we can't go around and kill koalas, we can't go around and kill white sharks. We now have a greater understanding of the intrinsic value of sharks, the tourism value of sharks, particularly in South Australia. But we also understand the roles that sharks play in the ecosystem. We've moved on from trying to eradicate species in general, so obviously unless it's an introduced pest, that's different, because we understand their ecological role.
After decades of hunts, nets, and new technology, the central question remains: if humans aren't a great white's natural prey, why do sharks sometimes turn on people?
There's several different hypotheses. The 2 most relevant for white sharks is that there's the mistaken identity hypothesis, which I don't think is necessarily relevant for in the New South Wales bites. It's more relevant when people are surfing, potentially when people are surfing near seal colonies, with the person in the wetsuit potentially looking like somehow resembling prey. All 3 shark species that bite people, that's bull sharks, tiger sharks, and white sharks, have an incredibly broad range of things that they eat. Food that they naturally eat, and that they're always exploring their environment. And unfortunately, saying exploring their environment, an exploratory bite from a white shark can be fatal.
For all our nets, drones, and science, the ocean will never be risk-free. The ocean is their home, and sharks don't play by our rules.